The stars were dying, and Ambassador Hana knew it was her fault. She stood in the observation deck of the Velen command station, watching another colony burn. The orange flames looked beautiful from this distance, almost peaceful. But Hana knew better. 15 million Velens lived on that world. Now they were ash. "That's the 8th planet this month," said Counselor Wren beside her. His skin had turned pale blue, the color of deep fear for their species. "At this rate, the Kreth will reach our homeworld in 6 weeks." Hana said nothing. What could she say? The Velen Concordance had existed for 3,000 years. 12 species living together in peace. They built museums and universities. They wrote poetry and composed symphonies. They studied the stars with wonder. They never built weapons. Now the Kreth Dominion was destroying everything they had created. The Kreth were warriors, born and bred for conquest. They came from a harsh world where only the strong survived. Their ships were massive and brutal. Their soldiers were 3 meters tall with armor-plated exoskeletons and claws that could tear through steel. The Velens had tried to negotiate. The Kreth ate their diplomats. They tried to run. The Kreth followed. They tried to surrender. The Kreth wanted extinction, not submission. "We have one option left," Hana said quietly. "The Forbidden Archives." Wren's eyes widened. "You can't be serious. The Council banned all research into that data. It's too dangerous." More dangerous than extinction? She had already made up her mind. While the Council debated and argued, Hana had spent 3 sleepless nights in the ancient database. The archives contained information from before the Concordance, from the early days of galactic exploration. Most species destroyed their old records, ashamed of their violent pasts. But someone had kept them. That's where Hana found references to the Terrans, humans. The files were incomplete and corrupted, but what remained was terrifying. Humans came from a planet called Earth, classified as a Class 12 death world. Most species evolved on Class 1 or Class 2 worlds, stable climates, gentle weather, manageable predators. Class 12 was almost unheard of. The rating meant the planet actively tried to kill anything living on it, and humans had not just survived there, they had thrived. 300 years ago, humans made first contact with the galactic community. The meeting lasted 6 hours before the Council issued an immediate quarantine. All trade forbidden. All communication blocked. Earth was isolated, and all records were sealed. The few fragments Hana found suggested why. Humans were too strong, too fast, too aggressive. They didn't think like other species. They didn't fight like other species. One report mentioned a human lifting objects that should have crushed their spine. Another described humans functioning in radiation levels that would kill most species in minutes. The final report simply said, "Keep them contained, for everyone's safety." But now, Hana needed something dangerous. She needed something that scared the entire galaxy. She needed humans. "I found an old beacon frequency in the archives," Hana told Wren. "It reaches into the quarantine zone. If we activate it, if anyone on Earth is listening, they might answer." "And if they do answer," Wren asked, "what makes you think they'll help us?" "Because the alternative is we all die." The Council voted against her plan. 15 members voted no. Only Hana voted yes. They called her reckless and desperate. They said activating the beacon might bring something worse than the Kreth. Hana activated it anyway. She used her diplomatic codes to access a remote communications array on the edge of Velen space. She entered the frequency from the archives and sent a simple message in Old Galactic Standard. "We are dying. Please help." Then she waited. For 2 days, nothing happened. The Kreth destroyed another colony. The Council prepared evacuation protocols for the homeworld. Wren stopped speaking to Hana entirely. On the 3rd day, 3 ships appeared. They weren't large. Compared to Kreth warships or even Velen explorers, they looked small and simple. Dark gray metal with no decorations or markings. They moved in perfect formation, appearing out of faster-than-light travel with precision that surprised the Velen sensors. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves," the command station transmitted. This is Captain Tay of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet, came the response. The voice was calm and measured. We received your distress call. Permission to dock? The council went into emergency session. Half wanted to send the humans away immediately. The other half was too desperate to care where help came from. While they argued, Hana made another decision without permission. Permission granted, Captain. Welcome to Velen Station. Captain Tay was not what Hana expected. She had imagined humans as monsters from the quarantine reports. Huge, violent, barely controlled. Instead, Tay was only slightly taller than a Velen. He moved with careful precision, like someone aware of their own strength. His uniform was plain and practical. His eyes were dark and alert, constantly observing everything around him. Two officers accompanied him. Lieutenant Yuna was smaller and quick-moving. Sergeant Kai was broader and heavily muscled, with scars visible on his neck. Both carried sidearms that Velen sensors identified as primitive chemical projectile weapons. Thank you for coming, Hana said. I wasn't sure anyone would hear us. We heard, Tay said. Earth monitors the quarantine border. When your message came through, the council debated for 6 hours before letting us respond. We're here against their recommendations. You came anyway? You asked for help. Tay said it like that explained everything. Hana brought them to the command center and showed them everything. The burning colonies, the Kreth advancement, the casualty projections. Billions dead. Billions more to die. The end of the concordance. Tay watched the displays without expression. Yuna took notes on a small device. Kai stood perfectly still, but Hana noticed his hands never moved far from his weapons. You're facing an extinction-level threat, Tai said finally. Your entire civilization is at risk. Yes, Hana whispered. And you have no military capability? No weapons? No defense force? We had peace for 3,000 years. We never needed them. Tay exchanged glances with his officers. Something passed between them, some silent communication. Then he turned back to Hana. We need fleet composition, location, and movement patterns for all Kreth forces. You'll help us? Ambassador, you called for help. We don't ignore that. Tay's expression became harder. But I need you to understand something. We're from Earth. We don't fight the way you probably expect. We don't follow the rules of war that other species use. If we engage the Kreth, it won't be clean. It won't be honorable. It will be effective. I don't understand. You will, Tay said quietly. Where are your enemies? Hana showed him. The Kreth fleet was gathering at Palace 7, preparing for another assault. 200 warships against 3 human vessels. The council called it suicide. Tay called it acceptable odds. As the human ships prepared to leave, Ren pulled Hana aside. What have you done? He asked. We don't know anything about them. I know they came when no one else would, Hana replied. And if they're worse than the Kreth? Hana looked out at the burning stars. Then at least we tried to survive. The 3 human ships departed in perfect formation, accelerating toward Palace 7 at speeds that stressed their hull integrity. Hana watched them go and wondered if she had just saved her people or doomed the entire galaxy. She would have her answer in less than a day. Commander Vix had destroyed 47 worlds in his career. He wore the skull of his first kill as a shoulder plate, a tradition among Kreth warriors. Today would be easy. Today he would add 3 small ships to his collection. Pathetic, Vix clicked through his mandibles, watching the human vessels approach. They send 3 ships against my fleet? This isn't a battle. It's an execution. His tactical officer agreed. 200 Kreth warships waited at Palace 7. Each ship carried enough firepower to crack a small moon. Their armor was thick and their shields were strong. The Kreth had conquered 17 species before the Velens. None had survived their first encounter with the Dominion fleet. Open a channel, Vix ordered. Let me speak to these fools before they die. The communication screen flickered. A human female appeared. She wore a simple gray uniform with minimal decorations. Her expression showed no fear, no concern, just calm attention. I am Commander Vix of the Kreth Dominion. You have entered a war zone. Leave now, and you may survive. Stay, and we will turn your ships into debris. The human tilted her head slightly. This is Lieutenant Yuna of the Terran ship Defiant. Your threat has been logged and analyzed. Then you choose death? We choose engagement. Recommend you surrender now. It will save time. Vix laughed, a harsh clicking sound. Around him, his bridge crew joined in. Surrender? 3 ships against 200? These humans were either insane or incredibly stupid. You amuse me, human. I will kill you last so you can watch your ships burn first. Recommendation logged, Yuna said flatly. Declined. The communication cut off. Vix gave the order to attack. 50 ships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes filled the space between the fleets. Enough firepower to vaporize a city, all focused on 3 small targets. The human ships moved. Vix had been in hundreds of battles. He had seen every evasion pattern, every defensive maneuver. What the human ships did shouldn't have been possible. They accelerated at angles that should have torn them apart. They changed direction in ways that violated basic physics. One ship spun completely around while moving forward at full speed, presenting its weapons to the Kreth fleet for 3 seconds before spinning back. 3 seconds was enough. The Kreth ships started exploding. What's happening? Vix demanded. What are they firing? Unknown projectile weapons, his tactical officer reported, confusion in his voice. No energy signature, no plasma, just solid objects, moving at impossible speeds. The human railguns fired tungsten rods, accelerated to 3% of light speed. When the rods hit Kreth shields, they didn't stop. They punched through shields like paper. They pierced armor like cloth. They turned the interior of Kreth ships into superheated gas and expanding metal. 1 minute into the battle, 15 Kreth ships were destroyed. All ships evasive maneuvers, Vix screamed. Scatter formation. But the human ships kept moving in patterns that seemed to predict where the Kreth would go. They accelerated at forces that would have crushed any Kreth crew into paste. 40 G-force turns that treated physics like a suggestion rather than a law. Inside the human ships, the crews functioned normally. Earth's gravity was 1.4 times galactic standard. Every human had spent their entire lives being pressed down by their own planet. 40 Gs with inertial dampeners felt almost natural. Without dampeners, they could survive 20 Gs for short periods. Kreth crews blacked out at 12 Gs. 2 minutes into the battle, 40 Kreth ships were gone. Vix made a desperate decision. Boarding parties, get our warriors onto those human ships. We'll tear them apart with our claws. The Kreth were masters of boarding actions. Their warriors were huge, armored, and deadly in close combat. 60 shock troopers launched from the Dominion flagship toward the human ship Indomitable. They cut through the hull and poured inside. What happened next was monitored by every ship in both fleets. The Velans, watching from their distant command station, saw the biological readouts. 60 Kreth warriors entering the human ship. Then the numbers started dropping. 58. 55. 50. 45. They're dying too fast, Counselor Wren whispered. What's killing them? Ambassador Hana pulled up the internal sensor feed. What she saw made her stomach turn cold. 12 human Marines were hunting the Kreth through their own ship. Sergeant Kai led the response team. He moved through corridors in a way that should have been impossible. Humans were smaller than Kreth warriors, but what they lacked in size, they made up for in speed and violence. Kai's team didn't form defensive positions. They attacked. A Kreth warrior swung massive claws at Corporal Mina. She ducked under the blow, stepped inside his reach, and fired her weapon point-blank into the gap between his armor plates. The Kreth fell. She was moving before his body hit the ground. 2 Kreth cornered Private Jisoo in a storage bay. They thought they had trapped a weak human. Instead, Jisoo used the zero-gravity environment to launch himself off the walls, moving in 3 dimensions while the Kreth could only think in 2. He eliminated both from angles they never expected. Kai himself killed 7 Kreth warriors. He moved with the calculated efficiency of a predator. Humans evolved on a planet filled with megafauna predators. tigers, bears, crocodiles. Early humans survived by being smarter, faster, and more vicious than anything hunting them. That evolution never left them. The fight lasted 8 minutes. No human casualties. 60 Kreth bodies floated in the corridors of Indomitable. Commander Vix watched the biological readouts flatline. His greatest warriors, his elite shock troopers, slaughtered like insects. For the first time in his career, Vix felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Full retreat, he ordered. All ships, emergency jump. Now. But the human ships had positioned themselves perfectly. They cut off escape vectors. They destroyed engines before ships could charge their faster-than-light drives. The battle that Vix thought would last seconds had turned into a massacre. 4 minutes total. 197 Kreth ships destroyed. Only 3 escaped, badly damaged and running on emergency power. Vix's flagship was one of them. He sat in his command chair, surrounded by alarm signals and failing systems, trying to understand what had happened. How had 3 ships destroyed his fleet? Record everything, he ordered his tactical officer. Every sensor log, every weapon analysis, every biological scan. The Emperor needs to know what we faced. What did we face, Commander? Vix looked at the retreating human ships. They hadn't even been damaged. No destroyed ships. Minimal hull scarring. They had fought 200 warships and walked away without losses. We faced something from a nightmare, Vix said quietly. We faced Deathworlders. The transmission from Captain Tay arrived at Velen Command Station 3 hours later. His image appeared on the main screen, calm and professional as before. Ambassador Hana, the Kreth fleet at Palace 7 has been neutralized. Your colony is secure. We're preparing to return to your position for further briefing. The entire command center was silent. Counselor Wren stared at the damage reports in disbelief. 3 ships, he whispered. 3 ships against 200. Captain Tay, Hana found her voice. Your casualties? 12 minor injuries during the boarding action. Nothing serious. Our medical officer cleared everyone for duty. And the Kreth? Functionally extinct in this system. A few escaped to report to their Emperor. I assume he'll want revenge. Tay said it so casually, like he had just completed a routine patrol instead of the most one-sided battle in recorded galactic history. How? Hana asked. How is this possible? Tay's expression didn't change. We're from Earth, Ambassador. We evolved under 1.4 G gravity, so we're stronger than most species. We breathe oxygen at concentrations that are toxic to others, so our endurance is higher. We survived predators that make Kreth warriors look small. Fighting is in our nature because everything on our world tried to kill us for millions of years. He paused, and something dark flickered in his eyes. You asked for help. We gave it. But you need to understand something now. We didn't defeat the Kreth fleet. We erased it. And when their Emperor learns what happened here, he won't send a larger fleet. He'll send everything he has. What do we do? Hana asked. You prepare for total war, Tay said, and you let us show you what humans do best. The screen went dark. Hana stood in the silent command center, surrounded by shocked Velen officers. She had called for help, and help had answered. But now she understood what Counselor Wren had warned her about. The humans weren't saviors. They were weapons. And she had just pointed them at the Kreth Empire. Emperor Draxol of the Kreth Dominion had ruled for 30 years. In that time, he had conquered 8 species and absorbed their territories into his empire. He was the largest Kreth alive, standing 4 meters tall with battle scars covering his exoskeleton. His claw had personally killed 12 rival challengers to his throne. Now he sat in his throne room, watching the sensor recording from Palace 7 for the 5th time. Impossible, he hissed. This must be a malfunction. All data has been verified, my Emperor, his chief advisor said carefully. Commander Vix's report is accurate. 3 human ships destroyed 197 of our vessels in 4 minutes. Draxol smashed his claw into the armrest, cracking the metal. Then we send more ships. We overwhelm them with numbers. My Emperor, if I may, The advisor hesitated. Perhaps we should research these humans before engaging them again. The archives mention they come from a Class 12 death world. Nothing survives those conditions without... Silence! Draxol rose from his throne. I will not show fear to some species hiding behind a quarantine. Gather the Grand Fleet. 3,000 ships. We will crush these humans and then finish destroying the Velens. I will lead the assault personally. The advisor bowed low. As you command, Emperor. Meanwhile, at Velen Command Station, Captain Tay stood before a holographic map of Kreth territory. Ambassador Hana and the Velen Council watched as he outlined his strategy. The Kreth will respond with overwhelming force, Tay explained, pointing to star systems on the map. They're gathering ships here, here, and here. Based on their fleet movements, I estimate 3,000 warships. They'll arrive at the Velen homeworld in approximately 3 weeks. 3,000? Counselor Ren's skin turned even paler. You destroyed 200 with 3 ships, but 3,000 is a significant escalation, Tay agreed. We've requested reinforcements from Earth. The second fleet will arrive in 2 weeks with 200 ships. 200 against 3,000, another counselor said. The odds are impossible. The odds are acceptable. Tay zoomed in on a Kreth world called Korath Prime. But we're not waiting for them to come to us. We're taking the fight to them first. This is their main staging planet. 30 million Kreth warriors, heavy fortifications, planetary defense shields. It's where they're gathering supplies and troops for the assault on your homeworld. Hana studied the display. You want to attack it? I want to neutralize it. If we remove their staging ground, we disrupt their entire operation. Captain Tay, with respect, that's impossible, Ren said. 30 million Kreth warriors? Even your Marines can't. We're not sending Marines, Tay interrupted. We're sending the 1st Death World Regiment. 2,000 soldiers. The silence in the room was absolute. 2,000 soldiers against 30 million defenders, Ren said slowly. You're insane. We're from Earth, Tay replied calmly. We're used to bad odds. 3 days later, Major Hune stood in the dropship above Korath Prime. 2,000 human soldiers waited in similar ships, all preparing for planetary insertion. The Kreth had detected the human fleet and raised their shields. They laughed at the small invasion force. They think we're going to fight them directly, said Captain Sora, checking her equipment. They think this is a conventional assault. It's not, Hyun said. We're from Earth. We don't fight fair. The dropships landed in the wilderness outside the main Kreth cities. The Kreth military mobilized immediately, sending hundreds of thousands of warriors to intercept the humans. They expected a pitched battle. Instead, the humans scattered into the forests. For the first 2 days, the Kreth searched for the human army. They found nothing. No camps, no fortifications, no large force groupings. Just small teams moving through difficult terrain, avoiding contact. Cowards, the Kreth commanders declared. They run from us. Then the humans began their real attack. Specialist Nari, a combat medic, led a team through the Kreth agricultural zones. They didn't carry heavy weapons. Instead, they carried seeds. Earth seeds. Specially engineered fast growth plants designed to thrive in Korath's environment. They planted kudzu, a vine that grew over a foot per day. They planted bamboo that could crack concrete as it expanded. They introduced earth fungi that broke down Kreth building materials. Within 3 days, Kreth infrastructure began failing. Roads buckled, buildings cracked, water systems clogged with invasive roots. Lieutenant Minho specialized in biological warfare. His team released earth insects into the Kreth population centers. Not deadly insects, but disruptive ones. Modified mosquitoes that found Kreth pheromones irresistible. They swarmed Kreth communication centers, attracted to the chemical signals the Kreth used to coordinate their military. Within a week, Kreth command and control was chaos. But the real terror came when the humans started hunting. Sergeant Kai led night raids. Kreth had poor night vision, a weakness from evolving under their planet's bright triple suns. Earth humans had evolved as pursuit predators, hunting in dim light at dawn and dusk. Kai's teams struck Kreth positions at night, using thermal imaging and light amplification to see perfectly in conditions that left the Kreth blind. They used psychological warfare, broadcasting Earth predator sounds into Kreth camps. Lions roaring, wolves howling. Sounds that triggered deep instinctive fear in the Kreth nervous system. The Kreth warriors, so confident in daylight, became paranoid and terrified in darkness. Captain June's unit mastered guerrilla tactics. They struck supply lines, destroyed ammunition depots, and disappeared before reinforcements arrived. They fought from cover, using terrain that the Kreth found impassable. Humans evolved as endurance hunters, capable of traveling incredible distances over rough ground. They moved through swamps, climbed mountains, crossed rivers, all while carrying full combat loads. The Kreth couldn't keep up. Colonel Jin, commanding the 1st Regiment, coordinated the entire operation from a mobile command post that moved locations every 6 hours. She stood in a camouflage tent, watching status reports from dozens of teams. Environmental disruption at 80%, an officer reported. Kreth infrastructure is failing across 3 continents. Biological warfare effectiveness exceeds projections, another added. Kreth communications are down to 30% capacity. Psychological impact is significant, a 3rd officer noted. Kreth troops are requesting transfer off-world. Morale is collapsing. Jin studied the holographic map of Korath Prime. Green markers showed human team positions scattered across the planet. Red markers showed Kreth military formations, increasingly disorganized and confused. You wanted to know what a death world produces, Jin said quietly to no one in particular. Survivors. And we're very good at surviving. Back on Velen Station, Ambassador Hana watched the reports from Korath Prime with growing horror. Specialist Nari had sent her detailed updates, trying to help her understand the human strategy. We're not trying to kill all the Kreth, Nari explained over a secure channel. We're making their world unlivable for them. Every tactic we're using, we learned from Earth. From surviving a planet that constantly tried to kill us. But this is cruel, Hana protested, turning their own planet against them. It's effective, Nari replied, and it will save Velen lives. The Kreth were gathering here to attack your homeworld. Now they're too busy trying to survive on their own planet. How long can you maintain this? As long as necessary. We've trained in every environment Earth offers. Deserts, jungles, Arctic tundra, deep oceans. Korath Prime is actually easier than most of Earth. Better gravity, breathable atmosphere, no venomous megafauna. For us, this is a moderate difficulty operation. Hana thought about that. For humans, invading a heavily fortified planet with 30 million enemy soldiers was moderate difficulty. What would hard difficulty look like? 3 weeks after the initial landing, Korath Prime fell. Not to conquest, but to abandonment. The Kreth military evacuated completely. 30 million warriors fled their own world, unable to cope with the environmental and psychological warfare the humans had unleashed. Major Hyun stood on a Kreth landing pad, watching the last evacuation ships flee into orbit. Around her, Korath Prime was quiet. The cities were intact, but empty. The military bases abandoned, the population gone. 2,000 humans had driven 30 million Kreth off their own planet without a single major battle. Clean victory, Captain Sora said beside her. Is it? Hyun looked at the empty city. We turned their world into a nightmare, used every dirty trick we knew. This isn't clean. It's war, and we won. We survived, Hyun corrected. That's all we ever do. Survive. The report reached Emperor Draxol 2 days later. His grand fleet was nearly assembled, ready to strike at the Velen homeworld. Then came the news that Korath Prime had fallen. His staging ground was gone. His supplies scattered. His warriors retreating in disarray. Draxol made a decision born of rage and desperation. Forget the staging ground, he ordered. We proceed directly to the Velen homeworld. If these humans want war, they will face the full might of the Kreth Dominion. And when we arrive, we will not take prisoners. We will not negotiate. We will crack their planet and end this. His advisor bowed. My emperor, perhaps caution would— Caution is for the weak, Draxol roared. We leave in 3 days. Send word to all ships. Total war protocols. No mercy, no survivors. The message was intercepted by human intelligence less than an hour later. Captain Tay read it carefully, then forwarded it to Admiral Day of the Second Fleet. He added only one line of commentary. They threatened civilians. Rules of engagement are suspended. The galaxy was about to learn what humans were truly capable of when they stopped being nice. The Terran's Second Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Velen home system. 200 warships, each painted in the same dark gray as Captain Tay's original 3 vessels. They moved in perfect formation, their approach calculated down to the millisecond. Admiral Day stood on the bridge of the flagship Resolute, watching the tactical display. The Kreth Grand Fleet was already there, 3,000 ships surrounding the Velen homeworld like a swarm of predators. They had arrived 12 hours earlier and were preparing to begin planetary bombardment. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Kreth flagship, the communications officer reported. Put it through. Emperor Draxal's face filled the screen. He looked even larger and more imposing than the intelligence report suggested. His mandibles clicked with satisfaction. So, the humans arrive. 200 ships against my 3,000. You are either brave or foolish. We're neither, Day said calmly. We're finishing what you started. Finishing? Draxal laughed. A harsh, scraping sound. You will die here, human. Your ships will burn. Your species will learn to fear the Kreth name. You threaten to destroy a civilian population, Day replied, his voice dropping to something cold and hard. You declared total war on people who called for help. That was a mistake. The only mistake was yours, coming here to die. Day leaned forward slightly. You're from a warrior culture. You think you understand war, but you don't. You understand conquest. You understand victory against weaker opponents. You've never faced something that evolved to survive against impossible odds. More Deathworld boasting. You're not fighting soldiers from a harsh world, Day interrupted. You're fighting the descendants of survivors who spent millions of years refusing to go extinct. Every human in this fleet comes from a genetic line that survived predators, diseases, ice ages, droughts, and a planet that tried to kill them every single day. Draxal's confidence wavered for just a moment. We stopped being nice when you threatened civilians, Day continued. Now you face humans at total war, and you're going to learn why the galaxy put us in quarantine. He signaled to cut the transmission. All ships, Day broadcast to his fleet. Total war protocols are active. No Kreth vessel leaves this system. Weapons free. The battle began in silence, the way most space combat did. No dramatic music, no shouted orders. Just calculated violence on a scale the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries. The human ships split into 20 groups of 10, each group moving independently but coordinated through quantum-entangled communications. They didn't charge forward like traditional fleets. They struck from multiple angles simultaneously, using tactics that confused and overwhelmed the Kreth command structure. Captain Tay's original 3 ships had used railguns to devastating effect. The Second Fleet brought those same weapons multiplied 100-fold. Tungsten rods, launched at relativistic speeds, traveling too fast for shields to fully deflect. The rods punched through Kreth armor like it wasn't there. But the Second Fleet also brought weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Nanodrone swarms launched from specialized carriers. Billions of microscopic machines, each no larger than a grain of sand. They spread through space like a cloud, undetectable by most sensors. When they touched a Kreth ship, they began dismantling it molecule by molecule. Entire vessels simply came apart, their structures failing from the inside out. The Kreth tried to adapt. They launched their own fighter wings. Thousands of small attack craft swarming toward the human ships. It should have been effective. It wasn't. Human point defense systems were designed to track incoming missiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Tracking slow-moving fighters was almost trivially easy. Automated targeting computers, developed to handle threats Earth's military had practiced against for centuries, lit up every Kreth fighter in seconds. The swarm was gone before it covered half the distance. Emperor Draxal watched his fleet dying and made another desperate decision. Deploy the siege cannons. Target the human flagship. The Kreth siege cannon was their ultimate weapon. It took an entire battleship to power and fire, but the energy beam it produced could slice through anything. 3 cannons locked onto Admiral Day's position and fired simultaneously. The beams converged on Resolute. The human flagship disappeared in a massive explosion of energy. For 5 seconds, the Kreth fleet celebrated. Then Resolute emerged from the blast, intact and undamaged. "How?" Draxall whispered. Admiral Day smiled grimly on his bridge. "Adaptive shielding. We calculated the energy output of your siege cannons from previous battles. We designed shields specifically to disperse that frequency and intensity. The human ships had analyzed Kreth weapons and built counters. They had studied Kreth tactics and prepared responses. They had turned war into mathematics, and the equations all favored Earth. But the true horror came when the human ships deployed electromagnetic pulse weapons. Traditional EMP was useless against shielded vessels. But human engineers had spent decades studying ways to defeat electronic systems. They developed EMP bursts that passed through shields like they weren't there, designed specifically to disrupt the quantum processors the Kreth used for ship control. A wave of electromagnetic energy swept through the Kreth fleet. Thousands of ships went dark simultaneously. Life support failed. Weapons went offline. Navigation systems crashed. The Kreth crews found themselves in dead vessels, floating helplessly in space. "Now," Day ordered. Boarding parties. What followed was later called the Hour of Screaming by the few Kreth survivors. Human Marines breached the disabled Kreth ships, but these weren't the same Marine units that fought at Palace 7. The Second Fleet brought specialized zero-gravity combat teams, soldiers who trained in the hardest environment Earth offered, space itself. Commander Bora led one of these teams. She and her squad moved through the disabled Kreth flagship with practiced efficiency. In zero gravity, humans were frighteningly effective. They used all 3 dimensions, attacking from angles the Kreth couldn't predict or counter. The Kreth were warriors on solid ground. In weightlessness, disoriented and panicking, they were prey. Bora's objective was clear: reach Emperor Draxall, stop him personally, and the Kreth leadership before they could regroup and threaten anyone else. She fought through 6 decks of Kreth defenders. Her team used breaching charges to blast through bulkheads rather than using corridors. They moved through the ship's superstructure like ghosts, appearing where the Kreth didn't expect, hitting hard and moving on. Staff Sergeant Minho distinguished himself during the assault. He single-handedly held a critical choke point for 8 minutes while his team evacuated wounded. 12 Kreth warriors tried to overwhelm his position. None succeeded. Minho moved with the efficiency of a machine, every action calculated for maximum effectiveness. Humans didn't tire as quickly as other species. Earth's high gravity meant they were stronger. Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere meant they had better endurance. Earth's deadly environment meant they never stopped being alert, never stopped being dangerous. Commander Bora finally reached the Kreth command deck. Emperor Draxall waited there with his personal guard, 20 of the largest Kreth warriors ever bred. They were elite soldiers, each one a match for 10 normal fighters. They lasted 90 seconds. Bora's combat armor, designed to function in every environment from deep oceans to hard vacuum, shrugged off their attacks. Her weapons, developed over centuries of human warfare, cut through their exoskeletons with precision. But it wasn't the technology that won. It was the human inside the armor. Draxall himself fell when Bora simply outmaneuvered him. He was stronger, larger, more heavily armored. But she was faster and smarter. She used his size against him, led him into positions where his bulk became a disadvantage, struck at weak points with the precision of a surgeon. When it was over, Emperor Draxall lay dead on his own command deck. The Kreth Empire's leader had fallen to a single human soldier. The battle, later called the 40-Hour Massacre by galactic historians, lasted exactly that long. When it ended, the statistics told a story that would echo through the galaxy for generations. Kreth fleet strength at the beginning, 3,000 warships. Kreth fleet strength at the end, 0 operational vessels, Human fleet casualties. 16 ships damaged. 3 ships destroyed. Acceptable losses. Ambassador Hana watched the aftermath from Velen Command Station. The space around her homeworld was filled with debris. Disabled Kreth ships drifted helplessly. The few Kreth escape pods that launched were picked up by human rescue vessels, the survivors taken as prisoners of war. "It's over," Counselor Wren said beside her, his voice numb with shock. "The entire Kreth Grand Fleet, just gone." "Not gone," Hana corrected quietly. "Defeated. By humans." She pulled up the casualty reports. 12,000 humans had died in the battle. Each name was recorded, honored, remembered. Captain Tay had told her that humans valued their individuals even in the midst of mass warfare. Every death mattered to them. But 12,000 humans versus the complete destruction of the Kreth military capacity. The mathematics were brutal and clear. Admiral Day's face appeared on the communication screen. He looked tired but composed. "Ambassador Hana, the Velen homeworld is secure. All Kreth forces have been neutralized. We're coordinating with your defense forces for cleanup operations." "Admiral, Hana struggled to find words. "I don't know what to say. You saved us. You saved our entire civilization." "You called for help," Day replied simply. "We answered." "But at such cost, 12,000 of your people." "They knew the risks. They came anyway." Day's expression softened slightly. "We're not saviors, Ambassador. We're survivors. And we survived by making sure our friends could survive too." The transmission ended. Hana looked out at the debris field, at the disabled Kreth ships, at the human vessels moving through the aftermath with military precision. The galaxy had kept Earth in quarantine for 300 years because they feared humanity's capacity for violence. Now Hana understood why. And she understood something else too. The quarantine hadn't been to protect the galaxy from human aggression. It had been to protect the galaxy from human effectiveness. From a species that turned survival into an art form and warfare into a science. The Kreth Dominion would never recover from this defeat. The Empire would shatter. The threat would end. But the cost of that salvation had been total destruction. And somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships continued their patrol, ready to do it all again if someone else threatened those who had asked for help. 3 months after the Battle of the Velen homeworld, Ambassador Hana stood in a memorial garden. Around her, 12,000 flowers bloomed, each one representing a human who had died saving her people. The Velen Council had insisted on building this memorial, a permanent reminder of the price paid for their survival. But Hana came here for a different reason. She came to understand. "Ambassador," a voice said behind her. Captain Tay approached, his uniform as plain and practical as the first day she met him. "I heard you've been coming here every day." "I'm trying to make sense of what happened," Hana replied. "Trying to understand what we unleashed." Tay stood beside her, looking at the flowers. "The Kreth Dominion has collapsed. Their empire broke into 17 separate factions, all fighting each other. Intelligence reports suggest it will take them centuries to reorganize, if ever. And in the meantime, how many Kreth civilians are dying in the chaos?" "Many," Tay admitted. "War doesn't end cleanly, even after the fighting stops." Hana turned to face him. "You saved us. But I see the cost now. Not just your 12,000 dead, the millions of Kreth, the destruction of an entire empire. Was it worth it?" "That's not for me to decide," Tay said. "You called for help. We answered. The Kreth made their choices. We responded to those choices. But you responded with total destruction." "Yes." Tay didn't shy away from it. "We did, because partial destruction wouldn't have stopped them. The Kreth didn't understand negotiation. They didn't respect weakness. The only language they understood was overwhelming force, so we spoke that language." Hana gestured at the memorial garden. "And these people? The ones who died? Do they think it was worth it? I can't speak for the dead, but I knew many of them. I served with them. And I know they volunteered for this mission. They knew the risks. They came anyway. Why?" The question had haunted Hana for months. Why would they sacrifice themselves for people they'd never met? For a species that wasn't even theirs? Tay was quiet for a long moment. Because we're human. Because Earth taught us that survival isn't just about individuals. It's about communities. About helping others survive too. Every human alive is descended from people who helped others, who shared food during famines, who protected the weak, who stood together against threats. Even if it meant becoming the threat yourselves? Especially then. Tay looked at her directly. You think we're monsters. I can see it in your eyes. You're grateful we saved you, but you're also terrified of what we did, what we're capable of. Hana didn't deny it. You're right to be cautious, Tay continued. We are dangerous. We're from a death world. Violence is part of our nature, but so is compassion, so is sacrifice, so is protecting those who need help. We contain both, and we choose which one to show based on the situation. How do I trust that you'll make the right choice? You don't, Tay said simply. Trust is earned, not given. But consider this. We had the power to conquer you just as easily as we destroyed the Kreth. We could have arrived and taken your worlds, your resources, your freedom. We didn't. We came when called, we fought when needed, and now we're preparing to leave. You're leaving. The Second Fleet is scheduled to depart in 2 weeks. We'll leave behind a small diplomatic mission and some defense platforms as a gift. But the military forces are going home. Earth doesn't want an empire. We have enough problems managing our own planet. Hana absorbed this information. The Galactic Council wants to meet with you. They're formally requesting that Earth join the community. The quarantine will be lifted. I heard. Admiral Day is preparing a response. What will you say? Tay smiled slightly. We'll accept with conditions. We're not interested in conquest or domination, but we are interested in exploration, trade, and mutual defense. Earth wants to be part of the galaxy, not apart from it. They walked together through the memorial garden. Velen children played nearby, laughing and running. Their parents watched with the relief of people who had faced extinction and survived. Those children will grow up free because of what your people did, Hana said quietly. They'll never know how close we came to ending. Good. Let them grow up innocent. Let them become artists and scientists like the Velens always were. That's what we fought for. A message came through on Ty's communication device. He read it and sighed. I need to go. There's a meeting with your council about setting up the defense platforms. Captain Tay, Hana stopped him. One more question. If another species calls for help in the future, what will Earth do? We'll answer, Tay said without hesitation. That's what we do. He left, and Hana continued walking alone through the memorial. She thought about the humans, about their contradictions. Warriors who cried for their fallen. Destroyers who built memorials. Killers who saved strangers. Later that evening, Hana visited the human medical ship that still orbited her planet. Specialist Nari, the combat medic who had sent her reports from Korath Prime, was there, treating wounded Velen civilians who had been injured in the Kreth attacks. Ambassador, Nari greeted her, finishing with a patient. What brings you here? I wanted to understand, Hana said. You fought on Korath. You helped destroy an entire empire. Now you're healing our people. How do you reconcile that? Nari wiped her hands and sat down. It's not about reconciliation. It's about doing what needs to be done. On Korath, we needed to stop the Kreth from attacking you. The best way to do that was making their staging ground unusable, so we did. Now, your people need medical help, so we provide it. But doesn't the violence haunt you? Every day, Nari admitted. I see the faces of the Kreth I killed. I remember their sounds. I dream about Korath Prime sometimes, but I also see the faces of the children playing in your streets who would be dead if we hadn't acted. She looked directly at Hana. War is terrible. It's destructive and brutal and ugly. But sometimes it's necessary. The Kreth weren't going to stop. They didn't want peace or negotiation. They wanted extinction. You called for help. We could have ignored that call. We could have stayed behind our quarantine and let you die. Would that have been more moral? I don't know, Hana whispered. Neither do I, Nari replied. That's the burden we carry, the uncertainty, the questions. But we carry it so that others don't have to. The next day, Dr. Sora, the chief Velen scientist, requested a meeting with human researchers. She had been studying the data from Earth trying to understand the planet that produced such dangerous people. Lieutenant June, a young human science officer, met with her. They sat in a laboratory filled with holographic displays showing Earth's environment. "This can't be real," Sora said, pointing at the data. "These gravity readings, these atmospheric oxygen levels, these temperature extremes. Nothing should survive here. It's too hostile." "It's home," June said simply. "But look at this." Sora pulled up geological data. "Your planet has tectonic plates that cause massive earthquakes, weather patterns that create storms with wind speeds over 200 kilometers per hour, ocean predators that grow over 20 meters long, land predators that can run 50 kilometers per hour and bite through bone, microscopic diseases that kill millions. How did your species survive?" "We adapted, we learned, we cooperated." June smiled. "Earth wasn't trying to kill us specifically. It was just being itself. Everything there is optimized for survival in harsh conditions, including us." "Your entire evolutionary history is warfare," Sora said in wonder. "Not warfare against other species. Warfare against your own planet, against your own environment." "That's one way to look at it. We prefer to think of it as a very long, very difficult training program. Earth made us strong because weak things don't survive there. It made us smart because stupid things get eaten. It made us cooperative because, alone, we die." Sora studied the young human. "You're not monsters. You're survivors. The galaxy feared you. But perhaps we should have understood you instead." "Understanding takes time," June replied. "We've got plenty of that now. The quarantine is ending. Earth is joining the galactic community. Maybe in a few generations we'll just be another species among many." "I doubt that," Sora said. "You'll always be the Deathworlders, the ones from the planet that tried to kill them, the survivors who refused to die." "Is that so bad?" "No," Sora said thoughtfully. "Perhaps the galaxy needs survivors. Perhaps we've been too soft for too long, too comfortable in our peace. The Kreth showed us that, and you showed us that survival is still valuable." Weeks passed. The Terran's Second Fleet prepared to depart. Admiral Day gave a final address to the combined Velen and human personnel. "We came here as soldiers," he said. "We leave as friends. The Velen Concordance will stand. The Kreth threat is ended, and Earth has taken its first steps toward joining the wider galaxy. But remember this," he continued, his voice serious. "What we did here was necessary, but it was not easy. It was not clean. War never is. We destroyed an empire. We killed millions. We did these things because the alternative was worse. But don't celebrate the destruction. Mourn it. Learn from it. And work to make sure it's never necessary again." The fleet departed 3 days later, 200 ships vanishing into faster-than-light travel, heading back to the quarantine zone that was no longer quite so isolated. Ambassador Hana stood at the viewing platform watching them go. Counselor Ren joined her. "The galaxy will never be the same," he said. "Earth is coming. And everyone knows what humans are capable of now." "They're capable of terrible things," Hana agreed, "but also wonderful things. They saved us. They suffered for us. They died for us. Do you think they're safe to join the galaxy?" Hana thought about Captain Tay and his quiet dedication, about Specialist Nari healing the wounded, about Lieutenant June explaining his harsh world with pride and love, about the 12,000 memorial flowers representing soldiers who chose to fight for strangers. "I think they're exactly what the galaxy needs," she said finally. "Not conquerors, not saviors, survivors. People who know the cost of giving up and refuse to pay it. People who will help others survive too, no matter what it takes. Even if it means becoming destroyers? Especially then." Hana turned away from the window. "The extraterrestrials cried out for help. The human Deathworlders brought total destruction to our enemies. And because of that, we live. Our children will grow up free. Our civilization continues. At what cost?" "At exactly the cost required," Hana replied. "No more, no less. That's what survivors do. They pay the price that must be paid, and they make sure it's worth it." Somewhere in the memorial garden, the wind rustled through 12,000 flowers. Each one a life given, each one a choice made, each one a reminder that survival sometimes requires sacrifice. And in the depths of space, heading back toward a blue planet most of the galaxy still feared, 200 human ships carried the weight of what they had done. Warriors who would always remember. Survivors who would never forget. Deathworlders who had shown the galaxy both the horror and the necessity of their existence. The extraterrestrials had cried out for help. The humans had answered. And the galaxy would never be quite the same again.